Hello everyone. Our group focused mainly on the new means for recycling in our world today by Kent and the Fire Humans. I'm Ryan Holmes, this is Kent Kirchner, Andrew Werner, and Landon Wagner. As we researched our TMP topic, recycling, we all found versions of the same problem. We ended up with the problem that recycling does not have the proper benefits to save our planet from global disasters due to waste created from humans. This waste produces greenhouse gases that end up in our atmosphere. These greenhouse gases create global problems such as global warming. Recycling is just the way to reduce some of these global issues because it reduces waste output. The main question generated from our research is, how can we make recycling more effective in our society? Recycling is vital to increasing many things on Earth, including carrying capacity and life in our environments. As we looked over our research question, we came up with solutions to promote recycling and reduce waste. This graph here shows that landfill spaces have been reducing greatly in the past years. Recycling is a very important solution to this problem because it reduces waste that would end up in these landfills, while also saving ecosystems around the globe.
So the first solution which we came up with was implementing education systems throughout public, private, and online schools throughout all of the United States. Our hope with this solution is to create a widespread and resounding message for the importance not only of recycling, but of recycling correctly and efficiently. This idea of providing education programs and systems has been implemented before and has proven to be quite successful. Many districts and counties have provided guidelines for recycling to improve the lives of their landfills and decrease water and air pollution caused by excessive waste use and disposal. The first recycling project for practicing education on reuse in schools was in Beaver County, Pennsylvania. They encouraged our students to recycle beyond school walls and share their knowledge with other students throughout the community. The next recycling program listed encourages planned waste reduction and recycling in Fayetteville, North Carolina. The next program lists guidelines for how students must specifically dispose waste at the University of Colorado in Boulder. Cal Recycle makes specific and revolutionary rules in schools for how to correctly dispose waste, as well as laws for how recycling must be implemented in their schools. The last program, provided by the Waste Management Association, has specific programs in which you can volunteer to recycle within your community, and many of these programs include taking action to compost and decrease your recycling to decrease the waste which is placed in landfills for your school, which is put there by your school and community. So this graph right here illustrates how recycling has drastically increased throughout the last 4.5 decades. And this is extremely important because we've realized the strain which we've made on our environment and its landfills, which has created an even greater need for recycling in our society today. And our belief is that students will make a massive impact on preserving our environment if they learn how to recycle correctly. Specifically, preserving our urban areas where much waste is produced and in need of being disposed is very important for this solution. So strengths and weaknesses of implementing education systems in our schools is that it brings forth awareness for a pressing issue in our society today, as well as creating a pervasive message which could be passed down throughout subsequent generations. Weaknesses include that there would need to be specific slots cleared in schools for recycling education, which is time consuming. And our other weakness was that professionals of recycling must be hired in schools to properly teach recycling so that the message isn't misconstrued. Implications would be that the classes would be mandatory and placed in public, private, and online schools. And limitations of our solution is that the schools, after teaching the programs, cannot affect the lives of the students after they've graduated, and so they can't control what the students do with their knowledge.
Solution 2 is extreme waste reduction in civilian homes. This solution is a very viable solution because all that civilians would need to do in order to reduce a significant amount of greenhouse gas emissions are simple and easy practices. like learning to repair rather than to discard, stop using one-use luxuries, and learning to compost. The US EPA estimated that if civilians began to use these practices, we could eliminate up to 42% of the greenhouse gas emissions due to waste generation. When each person works together on this problem, it can make a huge difference. This is a graph showing the increase of the population along with the waste generation from the years 1996 to 2015. We can see as the waste generation largely goes up, the population only goes up slightly. We can see that this is partially blamed on the increased productivity in factories being able to mass produce products that would increase waste output. So the strengths, people would be able to reduce a huge portion of the greenhouse gas emissions by using these simple techniques mentioned earlier. Also, the use of landfills would go down largely in our society. The weaknesses is that people would have to put in a lot more time and effort in order to effectively reduce a noticeable amount of greenhouse gas emissions. Also, distributors of products would go through a lot of trouble trying to find a way to reduce the waste going out in their products. Implications: a majority of the population would need to reduce to have an effective result. Limitations: people working longer hours might not have enough time to use practices of reduction.
Alright, so we believe, along with German researchers Pascal Lessel, Maximilian Altmaier, and Antonio Kruger, that solution 1 is more viable, beneficial, and fun. Last year, my school offered us a green team class, which was a ton of fun and very educational, and I learned way more about recycling than I ever knew was possible. This engaging class took us on many field trips to different recycling centers, and we even planted our own garden. The pros and cons of Solution 1 definitely outweighed those of Solution 2, although it is challenging to implement this kind of system. Although schools can even make a special class or an elective that students could take to make the world a better place. From this system, the class can hold friendly competitions of recycling or waste management, and the class can make various announcements to inform others who are not in the class how to properly recycle. And the group of students who properly recycle will set a good example to the younger students so that they will know how to recycle from years to come. And this class can hold drives to donate unwanted waste like old backpacks, old clothes, shoes, or even old stuffed animals to give to kids who need those kind of items. Overall, Solution 1 is obviously better for different schools, businesses, or other organizations to improve how we recycle and make our world a better place.
Thanks, guys. I got a couple of questions for you. Let's see. Let's start at this end and work our way back. So, Landon, describe an argument from one of your peers' individual reports that made you think differently about the conclusion you guys came to.
Well, Andrew had an economic lens, and he went through many different stages of how it is difficult to kind of recycle, and the process of recycling is honestly very expensive. It's not easy as we really believe it to be, and sometimes even storing waste in landfills could be a better solution. So that's where it made me think that is recycling even good for our planet, because it's expensive and it's time consuming. Should we just put everything in landfills?
Okay, good. Andrew, in what way did your team's resolution make you think differently about your research? So, did it change your perspective?
Yeah, it definitely did. In the beginning, when I first started researching, there was a lot of evidence saying that recycling was too expensive for it to be able to affect our planet in a positive way, and that really we should start looking to other solutions. But when you keep looking further into how we researched it in a group together, it became clear that we need to recycle in order to have a good benefit in our society today, because as the population grows up more and more, as we're seeing, the waste generation is going to go up as well, and it's going to keep going higher and higher. So we need to find a way to stop it now rather than let it become a bigger problem in the future.
Okay, terrific. Good. Kent, reflecting on your colleagues' work, which would you say had the biggest impact on the way you understand recycling now? Did anyone's argument in particular stand out to you?
Well, so kind of Andrew's stuck out to me because it kind of paired well with mine because they're kind of contrasting. So in my research, I found that recycling was definitely like a resounding answer to how we should dispose of like materials that should go into landfills. But his lens definitely brought a different like perspective to how difficult it is, but it's still more important that we preserve our world rather than make up a bunch of excuses on why we shouldn't be recycling and preserving and using what we already have. So it's kind of changed mine.
Terrific, thanks. And then finally, Ryan, how did the group decide to include or exclude Kent's perspective? Like, what was his lens, and how did you guys decide how his lens would influence the final presentation?
Oh, so Kent's lens was environmental, and we use a lot of his argument in our research, our TMP, and it definitely changed the outcome of our slides. We focus mainly on the environmental issues, like such as the greenhouse gases going into the atmosphere, the global warming, and that was definitely a big changer in our TMP.